Hi, Mrs. Leverton here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about plagiarism. And reason I'm spending so much time on this is because I feel it is a very, very important subject. As your teacher, I can definitely tell when a student's work is authentic or not. And I just want to make sure that you understand the right way to document sources in your paper so that you can avoid this situation and cite your sources correctly and get all the credit that you deserve for your paper, and that you give the credit you deserve for the sources of the information when you get it from the internet, or when you get it from a newspaper or a book or a magazine. So let's just go ahead and dive right into some of these slides. So here's a little bit of an anecdote. Suppose you're really good at jokes and you just didn't tell these jokes, you made them up yourselves. Now imagine one day you heard someone else telling your joke, but they never mentioned that it came from you. Wouldn't that make you mad? That's plagiarism. So if you take a look at this slide here, borrowing someone else's words, ideas, or creation without giving them credit is plagiarism. And so is copying and pasting information from the internet. Even if you take that information and just switch the words around a little bit, or paraphrase it, or summarize it, and if you're not giving credit to the source, it's plagiarism. Okay, so when you research a topic online, in a book, a magazine, or anywhere else, and you use the author's words or ideas in your own writing without giving that author credit, that's plagiarism. Okay, I think you get the point. It's basically not a good idea. It's cheating, and we don't tolerate that. We want you guys, we know you're smart. I want you guys to trust that you have great ideas, that you can actually phrase these things and think for yourselves, and just avoid plagiarism. Use your own words, okay? Moving right along. So the problem is, though, that a lot of students plagiarize, sometimes without even realizing it. And I do understand that it can be a tricky subject. So we're going to practice how to not plagiarize. I honestly remember as a student when I was in a research class, like I felt frustrated because if there's a topic that I'm learning about and I've never written about it before myself and I'm researching it, then I felt like I had to cite every single sentence. So it can be kind of tricky to know what to cite and what not to cite. So we're gonna talk about that, and we'll tackle that. But today's exercise is really just looking at identifying plagiarism and what is plagiarism and what isn't plagiarism. So that's the exercise that we're gonna look at today, okay? So exercise number 1. Before we do dive in and get started, I want you to go back to Google Classroom. I'm going to ask you to pause this video, and there is a link to this article, The Hungry Venus Flytrap. And I want you to take a minute to read through it, because the examples that we're going to be looking at today come from this one-page article. So pause the video, go back to Google Classroom, read through that, and maybe even keep that tab open so that as we go through these exercises, you can go back and forth from my video to this article and use that as a reference point. Okay, welcome back. This is Joe. Joe, right here with this face, is writing a report about the Venus flytrap for school. One of his sources is the article that you just read. It is your job to tell Joe when he's plagiarizing. So if you happen to be at school or at home working with a couple other people on this, that's fine. You guys can talk about this together. Take a look and see and decide together whether or not you think Joe is plagiarizing, or if you're just working on this alone, maybe stop and pause and think about it, refer back to the article and say, did Joe copy this? Is he plagiarizing, or did he give credit where credit is due? Okay? Moving right along. Are you ready? Here's the first sentence. So let's take a peek. The Venus flytrap attracts insects by displaying a red, lush-looking interior, tricking them into thinking it's a flower. So think back to the article, or if you have it open, click on that tab and look to see if this was plagiarism or not plagiarism. And the verdict is plagiarism. And if we compare in this next slide here, Joe's writing here on the left to the article on the right, we can see that the text in kind of orangish yellow is word for word copied from the article. So Joe plagiarized these words from the article just by copying and pasting. Okay, let's take a look here. So it says, Joe almost copied the entire sentence word for word into his report. Clear plagiarism because he didn't cite his sources. Definitely plagiarism. Let's look at another example. All right, so here we go. This example says, in The Hungry Venus Flytrap, Bug Lover explains that the Venus flytrap has a bright red center, which makes it look like a flower. This makes insects attracted to it. So take a look. Is this plagiarism or not plagiarism? So if you need to pause my video and go back and look at the article that we read and compare, take a look and see. What do you think? Okay. So let's take a look at this next slide. And it clearly states here, not plagiarism. Okay, so if you remember back to the other video that I made, they actually use a signal phrase here. In The Hungry Venus Flytrap, Bug Lover. Okay, so they signaled the name of the article and the person who said it. So they're telling you that this came from another source. So this is not plagiarism. And then obviously what they would want to do is put the in-text citation of the page number of the article or whatever where they got it from. Okay, so they did a good job. Joe put the information from the article in his own words, and he gave credit to the author, not plagiarism. Let's look at another example. This plant happens to grow in dirt that is too low in nitrogen to meet its needs. To make up for the lack of nitrogen, it gets it by eating insects. Plagiarism or not plagiarism? So again, if you want to pause my video, go back to the original article and take a look. Let's find out. And he plagiarized. Poor Joe. Oh no. So let's take a look at why this is plagiarism. So again, we have Joe's text on the left and the original text on the right. And you can see that Joe says it happens to grow in, and it says dirt. So he did change the word dirt, and then they had soil that is too low in nitrogen to meet. He changed its and their from their needs to make up for the lack of nitrogen. So he did change a few words, but it's still basically the same words that he copied, and it's plagiarism. So just changing a few words from the original sentence without crediting the author is still plagiarism. So let's take a look at one more example. The Venus flytrap needs to eat insects because they contain nitrogen, which is a nutrient the plant needs and can't get from the soil it grows in. So maybe go back to the original article, take a look and see what you think. It's not plagiarism, but it sort of is, okay? So if we take a look, the Venus flytrap needs to eat insects because they contain nitrogen, which is a nutrient the plant needs and can't get from the soil it grows in. Joe definitely used his own words this time, but he still hasn't given the author credit for the information. So even though he paraphrased it, he didn't give any sort of information about where he got his source. Okay, so as I was saying, even though you may paraphrase it and put it in your own words, you have to cite your source. So that's where you would add an in-text citation, or you could add that signal phrase about where you got that information from. Okay, so this would be a way to change it to make it better. So you could just add a phrase, a signal phrase either at the beginning or the end of the sentence, according to Samantha Bug Lover. Okay. Okay, one last example. According to Samantha Buglover, the jaws of the fly trap clamp shut in as little as 1/10 of a second, trapping the insect forever. Is this plagiarism or not? What do you think? And of course, it's not plagiarism because they have the signal phrase with the person who said it, and they're using the quotation marks, letting you know this is a direct quote. Okay, so he used the author's exact words and gave her credit for it and put quotation marks around it. Okay. So now that you know what plagiarism is, in our next exercise, our next video, we'll practice some ways to avoid it. Hopefully, this helps clear up a little bit of what plagiarism is and what it isn't and how to recognize it so that you can avoid doing that yourself. All right, see you in the next lesson.